We've all gotten pretty used to AI that can chat with us, right? It can answer questions, it can even write a little poetry, but that's just scratching the surface. Today, we're going to dive into something that takes AI from just talking about things to actually doing them. We're talking about Amazon Bedrock agents.
So let's start with this huge question because it really gets to the heart of it. What if your AI could actually do things? Seriously, think about it. Instead of just telling you how to book a flight, what if it could just go and book it for you? Or instead of explaining a super complex insurance claim, it could just process it, ping the right people, and get all the follow-ups on the calendar. That's the leap we're talking about here.
And to really get it, you gotta see the difference. On one side, you've got your standard chatbot. It's great, right? It's amazing at pulling answers from a big pile of data it already knows. But on the other side, you have an AI agent, and that is a whole different beast. It's built to take a complex request, break it down into a bunch of little steps, and then use actual tools, we're talking APIs, to get the job done.
And that is exactly where Amazon Bedrock agents come into the picture. They are designed to be that bridge, the connection between understanding what you're saying in plain English and actually executing tasks in your real-world software.
Okay, so let's look at the official definition, because there's one word in here that is absolutely key. Orchestrates. An agent isn't just a model, it's more like a conductor of an orchestra. It's managing the whole conversation, pulling in data from here, calling on other apps over there to perform actions, all to get a task done from start to finish.
So how does it pull that off? Well, it really boils down to these four main jobs. First, it uses a seriously powerful foundation model to really truly understand what you're asking for. And if it doesn't have enough info, it'll just ask you for more. Then comes the really cool part. It takes action by making API calls. And finally, if it needs a little more background context, it can go and query knowledge bases. Think of them like your company's internal documents, to get even smarter on the fly. All right, so how do you actually build one of these things? The best way to think about it is like you're creating the blueprint for a brand new digital employee. This first phase is all about defining what its job is and giving it all the right tools to be successful. Amazon calls this the build time phase, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. This is all the setup work. You're not talking to the agent yet. Instead, you are carefully configuring it, teaching it what it is, what it knows, and what it can do, all before it ever says hello to a single user.
And this breaks down that blueprint perfectly into four parts. First, you pick its brain, that's the foundation model, maybe something like Claude 3 Haiku. Second, you give it instructions. This is basically its job description. Third, you give it tools, which are called action groups that connect to your APIs. And fourth, you hand it the company handbook or knowledge bases so it has access to all your private data. Let's just double-click on that tools part for a second. An action group is probably the most critical piece for actually getting things done. It uses a standard format called an open API schema. Just think of it as a universal instruction manual for software that tells the agent exactly which APIs it's allowed to call, what info they need, and what kind of answer to expect back. This is literally how you give your agent its superpowers. Okay, so we've got the blueprint. Now let's put this digital worker on the clock. What actually happens when a user types in a request? How does the agent, think? This brings us to the runtime phase. The agent is live now. It's taking that blueprint we just laid out and actually putting it into practice. A user types something in, and the agent's internal reasoning process just kicks right into gear. The whole thing follows this pretty simple three-step flow. First, there's pre-processing, where it makes sure it understands the context of what you just said. Then comes the main event, orchestration. This is where it thinks, it plans, and it acts. And finally, there's post-processing, where it cleans everything up and gives you a nice, human-readable answer. That orchestration step is really the heart of the whole operation. So to make it a little less abstract, let's just walk through a super simple example from the Bedrock tutorial. Imagine you ask the agent a really basic question, what time is it? So inside its brain, a little loop like this starts spinning. First, it thinks. It comes up with a rationale. Okay, the user wants the time, and my blueprint says I have a tool for that. Then it predicts which tool to use, which in this case is the Get Date and Time API. Next, it acts. It actually goes and calls that API. And finally, it observes the result that comes back, which is the current date and time. It's this constant cycle of think, predict, act, observe.
Now you're probably wondering, how do you know it's doing all of this right? Well, this quote from the documentation highlights a killer feature. Bedrock gives you something called a trace of the agent's entire thought process. And honestly, this is a total game changer for developers. The trace means the agent isn't some mysterious black box. You can see the step-by-step logic, every single API it called, and every observation it made. It makes debugging and fine-tuning the agent's behavior so much easier, because you can see exactly why it did what it did.
Okay, so let's pull back for a second. What's the big picture here? Why is this technology such a fundamental shift for developers and for businesses? Here's the bottom line. Bedrock agents aren't just another cool AI feature. They really represent a whole new way to think about building applications. We're moving away from just building interfaces with buttons and forms and toward creating conversational systems that can take a task from the beginning all the way to completion. For anyone who actually builds software, the benefits here are just huge. Your development gets faster because Bedrock is handling all the heavy lifting, stuff like prompt engineering and managing the conversation history. You can automate business tasks that used to be way too complex. And it's all serverless, so you're not managing a single piece of infrastructure. It lets you just focus on the logic and the tools. And that really brings us to the final and, I think, the most exciting question of all. We've seen how you can give an AI a blueprint, a purpose, and a whole set of real-world tools. So now that your AI can do things instead of just talking about them, what will you build?